Hi, I'm Mike Bates, product manager at Scribe for the Insight product, and we're about to come out with our 7.9 release, which has some great new features. In this video, I'm going to cover a couple of things I've covered in a couple of other short videos. I'm going to recap those videos and cover one new topic, which is upgrades from older versions of Insight. You're going to want to listen in on that one. Again, just to recap the new features we've added. When you're creating integration processes now, you have the ability to assign file, time, and query integration processes, which were previously single-threaded, to the multi-threaded default, what we're calling the default group now, which is what is used to process queue-based message processes, which you might be familiar with. So by default, you're still going to be single-threaded in this serial group, or you can set it to the default group to now multi-thread your file, time, and query listeners. Further, in our higher license levels, you are going to have the ability to create more processor groups. So by default, we come with two groups. One is the single-threaded serial group I was just talking about, and then the rest of your processors will be assigned to this default multi-threaded group. And now with the upper license levels, you have the ability to add a new set of queues and a processor group. So I'm going to add a processor group at the same time. It's going to add the queues that processor group is going to pull messages from. And as I'm creating it, I have the option to add it to the shared message queues. By having that on, I'll just show you what that does. So we're going to create those. Say, okay, now when I go to my queue browser, I have those new sets of queues available in the queue browser. So that's the multi-threading stuff we've added and processor groups. And then big one on the Workbench side is centrally managed connections. So in all versions in the past, the connections were stored, every connection was stored in the DTS it was used in. So if you had duplicate connections, you'd have it many times in many DTSs. Now you can store connections one time in the database, accessible to all your DTSs. So now your connection manager is more of what we would call a global connection manager. So what I'm seeing here is all of my global connections in my Scribe internal database. Ones that are used in my DTS will have a usage. It used to be not all connections had a usage, now they will. If you need to use a connection within a formula, you're going to have to add it as a target to use it in a formula. We need to designate which ones are used now, since we have both listed in here. So you see in my database, I have a CRM connection and a Salesforce connection, and you've always got the Scribe internal, and anytime you open a DTS, that's going to be a part of it. If I then want to add one of my connections, now in each of the places where you can use a connection, you have the ability to choose from your list of database connections. So I can add my CRM connection to this DTS, should load up my entities, and then it will have it in my list of DTS connections labeled with the usage. Okay, so my connection has come up. We can see I'm exposing the entities there. Now if I go into my connection manager, you'll see my CRM connection has a target usage, so we've added it to the DTS. What I wanted to mention about global connections. So global connections is this great new feature. You're a new 7.9 user. You have this nice new ability to store all your connections centrally. What if you're coming from an older version? So we've spent a lot of time trying to test upgrades. How are we going to get all those connections from your DTSs into the internal database? And it's the same as before. You know, you're going to open up older DTSs in your Workbench. As you start to open up the older DTS, you will see the connections that we start to move the connections into the database. You're going to get prompted for if after a connection gets moved in, you may move another one in after that that's got the same name or it's got the same connection parameters, and we will walk you through those processes to get your database filled up with all those connections. And there really should be no, it's fine to do in the Workbench. If you have templates that we've put out in the past that are packages and you import them, you may get a lot of duplicate connection messages because older versions of Insight had, the connection names could only be source and target, or you might have made all your connections. A lot of our templates are like this, where many of the connections are the same name throughout many DTSs, but have different connection parameters. So you could tend to get a lot of these rename and reconcile connection messages as you're importing our templates. Specifically, there's 3 templates that this affects. It's the Nav CRM template, the AX Jumpstart, and the AX 2009 and Dynamic CRM template. We're in the process of updating each of those just to make those a little easier to import. Again, there's no problems with importing them. They'll go in. You just might get a lot of those windows and have to go through all the connections. We're changing them up just to make that import process a little simpler and less dialogues coming up as you're doing that. So that's a little recap of what's coming out in 7.9. Lots of bug fixes as well. We've also added the ability to set your Scribe services user as you're doing your install, which is a new nice feature. And it's coming out really soon, so be on the lookout for it. Thanks.